The cold was a living thing. It had teeth. It bit at Elara's skin through the thin fabric of her coat, a coat that was more of a memory of warmth than a source of it. Snow, once a beautiful Christmas Eve dream, was now a cruel white shroud, blanketing a world that had forgotten her. Her car, a rusty shell that had coughed its last pathetic breath an hour ago, was now just another frozen lump on the shoulder of a deserted highway. Inside, the air was sharp and brittle. Every exhale was a ghost in the darkness. Beside her, curled into the passenger seat, was the only thing in the universe that mattered. Mia. Her daughter's small body was wrapped in every spare piece of clothing they owned. A sweater, 2 scarves, even the threadbare blanket from the trunk. Mia's breaths were shallow, little puffs of white against the encroaching dark. She shivered, even in her sleep. Elara's own body was a traitor. A fire burned in her lungs, a searing heat that had nothing to do with warmth. Each cough felt like swallowing glass. Her head swam in a dizzying fog, the edges of her vision blurring into soft, indistinct shapes. Poverty was a slow sickness. It started by taking your money, then your home. Then it came for your strength, your hope. Finally, it came for your breath. She had run from Marcus, run from the man who had promised her a life and given her a cage. She had grabbed Mia and what little she could carry and driven until the gas ran out, then driven on the fumes of sheer will until the engine died. Freedom felt a lot like freezing to death. A wave of dizziness crashed over her, fierce and absolute. The steering wheel felt slick and distant beneath her trembling fingers. "Mommy." Mia's voice was a tiny, frightened whisper in the suffocating silence. Elara tried to turn, to offer a smile she didn't feel, to conjure a lie that everything would be okay. But her limbs were made of lead. Her eyelids were impossibly heavy. "I'm just resting, sweetie," she slurred, the words thick and clumsy on her tongue. The darkness at the edge of her vision was creeping in, a tide of black velvet. "Mommy, I'm cold." "I know, baby. I know." She tried to reach for her, to pull her closer, but her arm wouldn't obey. It was a useless, heavy thing. The fire in her chest was consuming her. The world tilted, spun, and then dissolved into nothing. Her last conscious thought was the image of Mia's wide, terrified eyes, a universe of fear in a 5-year-old's face. Then, only blackness. A profound, silent, and terrifyingly final blackness. Mia shook her mother's shoulder. "Mommy." No response. Just the limp weight of her body against the seat. "Mommy, wake up." Her voice was small, swallowed by the vast, cold emptiness of the car. Tears began to well, hot against her frozen cheeks. She shook harder. "Please, Mommy." Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the fog of her childish understanding. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. She pushed open her door, the cold air hitting her like a physical blow. The snow crunched under her small boots. Headlights appeared in the distance, 2 yellow eyes cutting through the swirling flakes. A car. A person. Maybe help. Her mother had told her never to talk to strangers, but her mother was sleeping a scary, deep sleep. The car slowed, its engine a low, powerful rumble. It was a big car, black and sleek, looking like a panther against the snow. It pulled over just ahead of them. A man got out. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and the falling snow seemed to disappear against the dark wool of his expensive-looking coat. He moved with a quiet confidence, his face cast in the shadow of the night. Mia shrank back against the car, her heart thumping a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Kaelen Vance hated Christmas Eve. It was a monument to what he had lost. Every twinkling light, every cheerful carol was a fresh stab of grief. The sprawling mansion he was driving toward was not a home. It was a mausoleum of memories, filled with the ghost of his wife's laughter. His daughter, Lily, sat silently in the back, a small, somber shadow who had forgotten how to smile 3 years ago. He was just going through the motions. For her. Then he saw it. A beat-up sedan on the side of the road, its hazard lights long dead. A ghost ship in the snowstorm. His instincts, honed from years spent with grease under his nails long before he ever sat in a boardroom, screamed at him. Trouble. He pulled over, his hand already reaching for the heavy-duty flashlight he kept in the glove compartment. As the beam cut through the snow, it landed on the smallest figure he had ever seen. A little girl, no older than his own Lily, standing by the car, her face streaked with frozen tears. His heart, a cold, dormant thing, gave a painful lurch. He got out of the car, keeping his movements slow, deliberate. He did not want to frighten her. "Hey there," he said, his voice softer than he'd intended. "Are you all right?" The little girl just stared at him, her eyes wide with a terror that broke something inside him. She pointed a tiny, mitten-clad hand toward the car. Her voice trembled, a fragile, breaking whisper. "Mom won't wake up." 3 words. 3 words that sent a jolt of ice through Kaelen's veins. He was at the car in 3 long strides, wrenching the driver's side door open. A woman was slumped over the steering wheel, her skin pale and waxy in the glow of his flashlight. Her hair, a cascade of dark silk, fell across her face. He pressed 2 fingers to her neck. For a terrifying second, there was nothing. Then, a flutter. Faint. Thready. But there. Relief washed over him, so potent it almost buckled his knees. He looked at her face, truly looked. Even in this state, she was beautiful, with high cheekbones and a gentle mouth. But she was also painfully thin, the shadows under her eyes telling a story of exhaustion and hardship. He turned back to the little girl, who was now sobbing quietly. He knelt down, getting on her level. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice a low rumble of reassurance. "Mia," she hiccuped. "Okay, Mia. My name is Kaelen. Your mom is very sick, but she's going to be okay. I'm going to help you both." He meant it. It was a promise he made not just to this frightened child, but to himself. Tonight, he would not be the grieving widower. He would not be the billionaire CEO. He would be the mechanic. The man who fixes things that are broken. He gently scooped the woman from the driver's seat. She was lighter than a feather, a fragile bird in his arms. He could feel a terrifying heat radiating from her skin. Fever. A bad one. He carried her to his car, settling her carefully in the passenger seat before wrapping his own coat around her. Then he went back for Mia, lifting her up and carrying her to the back seat, placing her next to a silent, observing Lily. "Lily," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "This is Mia. Her mom is sick. We're going to take them home and get them warm." Lily just nodded, her large, dark eyes fixed on the small, crying girl beside her. Kaelen got behind the wheel, his mind racing. Hospital? No, the storm was getting worse. The roads would be treacherous. His private doctor. He would call Dr. Evans. He could be at the house in under an hour. He drove, his powerful car cutting through the snow with an ease that felt like a betrayal of the hardship he had just witnessed. He glanced at the woman beside him. Her breathing was shallow, a rasping sound in the quiet of the car. He had brought strangers into his life, into his home. He had broken every rule of his carefully constructed, emotionally sterile existence. But looking at her pale face and hearing the soft sniffles from the back seat, he knew he had no other choice. This was not just about fixing a car. It was about saving a life. Maybe, just maybe, more than one. Elara awoke to the scent of lavender and the impossible sensation of soft, clean sheets against her skin. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. Or worse, she sat up with a gasp, the room spinning around her. It was not a hospital room. It was a bedroom, vast and luxurious, decorated in muted tones of gray and cream. A fire crackled in a marble fireplace across the room. Panic seized her. Where was Mia? She threw the heavy duvet aside, her bare feet hitting a plush, thick rug. She was wearing a soft, silk pajama set that was not her own. Her own clothes, damp and dirty, were nowhere to be seen. She stumbled toward the door, her body weak and shaky. She pulled it open and found herself in a hallway so long and wide it could have been a gallery. The walls were lined with art, the floors were polished wood. The silence was deafening. "Mia," she called out, her voice a weak croak. A door down the hall opened. The man from the road appeared. He was even more imposing indoors, dressed now in a simple black sweater and dark pants. He looked solid, dependable, and worried. "You're awake," he said, his voice a deep, calming baritone. "You should be resting. You have severe pneumonia." "My daughter," Elara whispered, her hand clutching the doorframe for support. "Where is my daughter?" "She's safe," he said immediately, taking a step toward her. "She's with my daughter, Lily. They're downstairs. They ate, and now they're watching a Christmas movie." Relief made her legs give way. He was there in an instant, his arms steadying her, guiding her back into the room and onto the edge of the bed. His touch was gentle, respectful. It was a kindness she was not used to. "A doctor came," he explained. He gave you an injection of antibiotics. He said you were suffering from exhaustion and hypothermia as well. You've been asleep for almost a full day. A full day? She had lost a full day. Who are you? She asked, her voice barely audible. My name is Kaelen Vance. The name meant nothing to her. She had been too busy surviving to pay attention to the names of the powerful. Why did you help us? He looked at her, his dark eyes holding a deep, ancient sadness. Because no child should be crying on the side of the road on Christmas Eve. It was that simple, and that profound. Tears pricked her eyes. Tears of gratitude, of fear, of sheer, overwhelming confusion. She felt like a trespasser in a fairy tale. This world of crackling fires and silk pajamas was not hers. Her world was cold cars and empty stomachs. I don't have any money, she stammered, the words tasting like ash. I can't pay you for the doctor, or for any of this. I am not asking you to, he said, his voice soft but firm. All I am asking is that you rest. Let yourself heal, for your daughter's sake. He left a tray of food on the bedside table, a bowl of steaming soup, a piece of bread, a glass of water. Simple sustenance that felt like a feast. She ate, the warm soup chasing some of the chill from her bones. Later, Mia was brought to her. Her daughter ran into her arms, her small body warm and smelling of chocolate. Mommy, you woke up, she cried, burying her face in Elara's neck. Elara held her tight, breathing in the scent of her, reassuring herself that she was real, that she was safe. Kaelen has a big house, Mia chattered. And Lily has so many toys. And we had pancakes for breakfast. Real ones. Behind her, a small girl with solemn eyes stood in the doorway. Lily. She clutched a worn teddy bear to her chest, watching them with an unnerving stillness. She did not smile. The days that followed were a strange, dreamlike haze. Elara's body slowly began to heal, the fire in her lungs receding, her strength gradually returning. Kaelen was a constant, quiet presence. He never pried, never asked questions about her past. He simply made sure she had everything she needed: food, medicine, peace. But his house, for all its luxury, was a silent place. The air was thick with unspoken grief. Lily rarely spoke, communicating mostly through shrugs and nods. She watched Elara with a guarded curiosity, her eyes missing the light that a child's eyes should have. Mia, ever the resilient one, tried to draw her out, offering her toys, chattering away about her imaginary friends. But Lily remained a closed book. Elara understood. This little girl was guarding her heart, just as Elara was guarding hers. One afternoon, as Elara was regaining her strength, she found herself in the enormous, state-of-the-art kitchen. She felt a desperate need to do something, to contribute, to feel useful, to not be a burden. Kaelen had a housekeeper who came during the day, a polite but distant woman who prepared simple, healthy meals. But the kitchen felt cold and used. It lacked a soul. Elara remembered a snatch of conversation she'd overheard between Kaelen and his housekeeper. Something about Lily not eating, pushing her food around her plate. He had mentioned mac and cheese. His wife used to make it from scratch, the real kind, with a baked breadcrumb crust. Lily hadn't touched it since she was gone. A quiet resolve settled in Elara's chest. She found the ingredients easily in the well-stocked pantry and refrigerator. Flour, butter, milk, sharp cheddar, Gruyere. Her own mother had taught her this recipe, a comfort food from a life that felt a million miles away. Her hands moved with a familiar, forgotten rhythm. Melting the butter, whisking the flour, slowly adding the milk until it was a smooth, creamy bechamel. Stirring in the grated cheese until it was a molten river of gold. The aroma began to fill the silent house. Warm, savory, comforting. The smell of home. When she pulled the bubbling, golden brown dish from the oven, she saw a small figure standing in the doorway. It was Lily. She was clutching her bear, her nose twitching as she took in the scent. Her large, dark eyes were fixed on the casserole dish. Elara's heart squeezed. She didn't say anything. She simply served a small portion into a bowl, the spoon making a satisfying crackle as it broke through the crispy crust. She placed it on the kitchen island and slid a stool over. An invitation. Lily hesitated for a long moment. Then, slowly, she climbed onto the stool. She picked up the fork. She took a tiny, tentative bite. Her eyes, which had been so guarded, so solemn, suddenly widened. A flicker of something, a memory, a taste of a lost love, danced in their depths. She took another bite, and another. She ate the entire bowl without saying a word. When she was finished, she slid off the stool and walked over to Elara. She looked up at her, her expression unreadable. Then, she reached out and gently tugged on the sleeve of Elara's sweater. It was the first time she had initiated any physical contact. It was a small gesture, but it felt monumental. Later that evening, as Elara was tucking Mia into a bed that was bigger than their entire old apartment, there was a soft knock on the door. It was Lily. She stood there, holding a piece of paper in her hand. She held it out to Elara. It was a drawing. A crayon drawing of 4 stick figures. A tall man, a woman with long dark hair, and 2 small girls, one with blonde curls like Mia, one with straight dark hair like her own. They were all holding hands. And above them, a bright yellow sun was shining. A sun with a smiling face. Elara's throat tightened. She looked from the drawing to the little girl's serious face. "Thank you, Lily," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "It's beautiful." Lily gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Then she turned and walked back to her room. Elara closed the door, her back resting against the cool wood. She looked at the drawing, at the simple, heartfelt depiction of a family, of their 4 broken pieces somehow fitting together. A single tear traced a path down her cheek. It was not a tear of sadness. It was a tear of hope, a fragile, terrifying, and beautiful thing. The quiet of the house was different that night. It was less an absence of sound and more a presence of peace. But sleep would not come for Elara. Her mind was a whirlwind of gratitude and fear. This safety, this warmth, it felt temporary, borrowed. She knew she couldn't stay here forever. She and Mia had to move on. But where? To what? The thought of going back to the cold, to the uncertainty, sent a shudder through her. Giving up, she slipped out of bed and made her way downstairs, drawn once again to the kitchen, the heart of the house. A single dim light was on above the island, casting long shadows across the gleaming countertops. Kaelen was there. He was sitting at the island, a glass of what looked like whiskey untouched in front of him. He stared into the distance, his powerful shoulders slumped, carrying a weight she could not see but could feel in the very air around him. He looked up as she entered, his expression not of surprise, but of weary recognition, as if he had been expecting her. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked, his voice a low rasp. She shook her head, pulling a robe tighter around herself. "Too much on my mind." "Join me," he said, gesturing to the stool opposite him. She hesitated, then sat. The silence stretched between them, comfortable and profound. It was he who broke it. "Lily ate dinner tonight," he said, his voice laced with a wonder that was heartbreaking. "She ate everything. She hasn't done that in 3 years." "It was just mac and cheese," Elara said softly. "No," he corrected her, his eyes meeting hers across the island. "It wasn't just mac and cheese. It was a memory. My wife, Sarah, it was her specialty." He finally looked down at his glass, swirling the amber liquid. "This house has been quiet for so long," he confessed, his voice raw with a grief that was still fresh. "After she died, the life just went out of it. Out of me. Out of Lily. We just existed, going through the motions." He took a slow breath. "The last few days, having you and Mia here. I heard laughter today. Real laughter. Mia was telling a silly joke, and Lily, she actually giggled." He looked at Elara, his gaze intense. It was like hearing a ghost. A beautiful, welcome ghost. The vulnerability in his voice, in his eyes, unlocked something in Elara. This powerful, wealthy man was just as broken as she was. His wounds were different, but they were just as deep. She found herself speaking, the words tumbling out before she could stop them, a torrent of truth she had held inside for too long. My ex-husband, he wasn't a good man," she began, her voice trembling. "His name is Marcus. He was charming at first. Made me feel like I was the only person in the world." She traced a pattern on the cold granite countertop with her finger. Then the charm faded. It became control. He told me what to wear, who to see. He isolated me from my friends, my family. He told me I was worthless, that no one else would ever want me. And I believed him. The memories were sharp, painful. He controlled all the money. I wasn't allowed to work. He said my job was to be a wife, a mother. But it wasn't a home. It was a prison. When I finally got the courage to leave, I thought I had a plan. I had saved a little cash, hidden it away. But he found it. He took everything. The car was in his name. The apartment. He drained the small bank account I thought he didn't know about. She finally looked up at Kaelen, her eyes swimming with unshed tears. He left us with nothing. On purpose. He told me he wanted me to fail. He wanted me to come crawling back, to prove that I couldn't survive without him. A single tear escaped, and she wiped it away angrily. I would rather freeze to death on the side of the road than ever go back to him. Kaelen listened, his expression unreadable, but his attention absolute. He didn't offer platitudes. He didn't say he was sorry. He just listened. When she was finished, a heavy silence fell over the room again. But it was a different kind of silence. It was a silence of shared understanding, of two broken souls seeing the cracks in each other. "You are not worthless," Kaelen said, his voice so low and certain it vibrated through her. "You are the strongest person I have ever met." He reached across the island, his large, warm hand covering her cold, trembling one. "You and Mia are safe here," he said. It was not a suggestion. It was a declaration. "For as long as you need. This is your sanctuary." For the first time in years, Elara felt a flicker of something she had thought was long dead. She felt seen. She felt safe. And in the quiet kitchen, in the middle of the night, surrounded by the ghosts of their pasts, a fragile new beginning started to take root. Weeks turned into a month, then two. The sanctuary Kaelen had promised became a home. The rhythm of their lives merged into a gentle, healing cadence. Elara's presence slowly, surely, breathed life back into the house. She filled it with the scent of baking bread, the sound of her soft singing as she cooked, the sight of fresh flowers in a vase on the table. She and Kaelen fell into an easy partnership, a silent dance of two people parenting two children. Mia and Lily became inseparable, their giggles echoing in the once silent halls. They were sisters in all but blood. Elara found her own strength returning, not just physically, but emotionally. She started sketching again, an old passion she had abandoned under Marcus's critical gaze. Kaelen had a room cleared out and turned into a small art studio for her, filling it with supplies without her even having to ask. He would watch her sometimes, a look of quiet admiration in his eyes. A bond was forming between them, deep and unspoken. It was in the way he brought her a cup of tea just how she liked it. It was in the way she saved him the last piece of the pie she had baked. It was in the shared smiles over the heads of their daughters. It was a slow, tentative blooming of something that felt like hope. Then the past came calling. It arrived not with a bang, but with the slick, glossy pages of a magazine. Kaelen, as the CEO of a major automotive corporation, was a person of public interest. He had attended a charity gala, and, for the first time, he had not gone alone. He had asked Elara to accompany him. She had been terrified, but he had held her hand, his quiet strength a shield around her. A photographer had snapped a picture, a candid shot of them laughing together, their heads close. The headline read, "Billionaire Kaelen Vance steps out with mystery woman." The magazine found its way into the wrong hands. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. An unknown number. Elara answered, thinking it was a school nurse or a delivery. Well. The voice on the other end purred, a snake uncoiling in her ear. "Looks like my little bird found a golden cage to fly into." The blood drained from her face. "Marcus." Her breath caught in her throat. Her hand trembled so violently, she almost dropped the phone. How did you find me?" "The whole world can see you, Ellie Bell," he sneered, using the cloying pet name that now made her skin crawl. "Hiding out with a billionaire. I have to say, I'm impressed. You always were more resourceful than I gave you credit for." His voice turned hard, the charm evaporating to reveal the cold menace beneath. "Here's how this is going to work. You've obviously landed on your feet. That means you can afford to pay me back for all the trouble you've caused. Let's say $1 million. A small price to pay for your new life, don't you think?" "I don't have that kind of money," she whispered, her voice a strangled thread. "Don't lie to me. Your new boyfriend does. Get it for me. Or I go to the press. I'll tell them all about you. About what a terrible mother you are. How you abandoned your loving husband. I can make up some very convincing stories, Elara. I can ruin you. And I can ruin him." The threat hung in the air, thick and poisonous. "You have 24 hours, he said, and hung up. Elara sank to the floor, the phone slipping from her numb fingers. The sanctuary was breached. The monster was at the gate. All she could think about was protecting them. "Kaelen." Lily. They had given her and Mia a new life. She could not, would not, let her past destroy their peace. Her first instinct, the one Marcus had beaten into her for years, was to run, to disappear, to take Mia and vanish into the night, just like before. She packed a single bag, her movements frantic, her mind a screaming vortex of panic. She scribbled a note, the words blurring through her tears. Thank you for everything. I'm so sorry. She went to get Mia from the playroom, her heart a leaden weight in her chest. Kaelen found her in the hallway, bag in hand, Mia's coat clutched in her fist. He took one look at her face, at the raw terror in her eyes, and he knew. Elara, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. What's going on? We have to leave, she sobbed, the words tearing from her throat. He found me. He's going to ruin you. She tried to push past him, but he stood firm, a mountain of quiet resolve. He gently took the bag from her hand and set it on the floor. Then he took her by the shoulders, his grip firm but gentle, forcing her to look at him. Who found you? Marcus, she choked out. He called. He wants money. He's threatening to go to the press. Kaelen's expression hardened, his jaw tightening. The gentle protector was gone. In his place was the CEO, the man who did not back down from a threat. You are not going anywhere, he said, his voice a low, commanding rumble. This is your home. You are not running anymore. But he'll destroy you, she cried. Your reputation, your company. Lily, let him try, Kaelen said, a dangerous fire igniting in his eyes. He has no idea who he is dealing with. He led her to his study, a room paneled in dark wood and lined with books. He sat her down in a leather armchair and handed her a glass of water. He made a series of phone calls. To his head of security. To his personal lawyer, a man known for being a shark in a tailored suit. To a private investigator. His voice was calm, precise, and utterly ruthless. He issued orders with a swift, decisive authority that left Elara breathless. Within an hour, a plan was in motion. When he was done, he came and knelt in front of her. He took her trembling hands in his. Elara, look at me. She met his gaze. Your past is not your fault, he said, his voice softening once more. It is a part of your story, but it does not define who you are. And you are not facing it alone. Not anymore. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the sprawling, snow-dusted grounds. I am not just protecting my reputation, he said, his back to her. I am protecting my family. He turned around, and the look in his eyes made her heart stop. I am protecting you. And Mia, because you are my family now. It was a declaration. A public stand taken in the privacy of his study. It was everything. The next 24 hours were a blur. Kaelen's team moved with terrifying efficiency. The private investigator dug into Marcus's life, uncovering a trail of debt, fraud, and other women he had manipulated. The lawyer filed for an emergency restraining order. Security was heightened around the estate, discreet but absolute. Marcus called again, his voice smug and confident. This time, the call was traced, recorded, and Kaelen's lawyer was listening in. Marcus made his threats, his voice dripping with venom. He tried to blackmail a titan of industry. It was a fatal miscalculation. He had mistaken Kaelen's kindness for weakness. The next morning, as Marcus waited for a call he thought would bring him a fortune, the police arrived at his door instead. He was arrested for extortion. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Kaelen's lawyer made it clear that they would be pursuing every possible charge. The threat was not just neutralized. It was annihilated. Elara watched the news report on a small television in the kitchen, her hand clasped tightly in Kaelen's. Marcus's face, angry and defeated, flashed across the screen as he was led away in handcuffs. It was over. Truly, finally over. The weight that had been crushing her for years lifted, and she felt so light she could have floated away. She turned to Kaelen, tears of relief streaming down her face. Thank you, she whispered. It was an inadequate phrase for the magnitude of what he had done. He simply wiped away her tears with his thumb, his touch infinitely gentle. I told you, he said softly. I protect my family. That evening, the house was filled with a palpable sense of peace. A new chapter had begun. Kaelen built a fire in the living room, and the four of them snuggled on the large sofa, watching a movie. Mia was asleep, her head in Elara's lap. Lily was leaning against Kaelen, her eyes heavy. It felt so natural. So right. Later, after the girls were in bed, Kaelen and Elara sat by the dying embers of the fire. "Elara," he began, his voice hesitant for the first time. He turned to face her, taking her hand. "What we have here, what we have built, it's real. You know that, don't you?" She nodded, her heart thudding in her chest. "Yes. I don't want it to be temporary," he continued, his thumb stroking the back of her hand. "I don't want to be just your sanctuary. I want to be your home. Your forever." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box. Elara gasped. He opened it. Inside was a simple, elegant ring with a single, perfect diamond that seemed to capture the firelight. "I love you, Elara," he said, his voice thick with an emotion that mirrored her own. "I love your strength, your kindness, your spirit. You brought the light back into this house. You brought the light back into my life, into Lily's life." Tears welled in her eyes as he slid off the sofa and knelt before her. "But this isn't just my decision," he said, looking up at her. "It has to be theirs, too." On cue, two small figures appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from their eyes. Lily and Mia. They had clearly been eavesdropping. Kaelen smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Girls," he said, "I have a very important question to ask. For both of you." They patted over, their faces a mixture of curiosity and excitement. "I love Elara very much," Kaelen said, his gaze shifting from the girls to the woman he adored. "And I love Mia like she's my own. I want to ask Elara to marry me, to make our family official. But I can only do it if you both agree." Mia's face broke into a gigantic grin. "Does that mean you'll be my new daddy?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder. "I would be honored," Kaelen said, his voice catching. Lily, ever the quiet one, walked over to Elara. She looked at the ring, then up at Elara's tear-streaked face. She didn't say anything. Instead, she wrapped her small arms around Elara's neck and hugged her tightly. Then she whispered, so softly that only Elara could hear, "Will you be our mom?" And with those words, the last of the walls around Elara's heart crumbled into dust. She hugged Lily back, her own sob of pure joy escaping. She looked at Kaelen, who was watching them with tears in his own eyes. She nodded, unable to speak. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. The wedding was not a grand affair. There were no magazine photographers, no titans of industry. It took place in the spring, in the sprawling garden behind the house, which was now bursting with life and color. The guests were few. Kaelen's lawyer and his wife, Dr. Evans, the kindly housekeeper who now smiled all the time. The sun shone brightly, warming the earth. Elara wore a simple white dress, her dark hair woven with small, delicate flowers. Kaelen stood waiting for her under a blossoming cherry tree, his handsome face alight with a happiness she had never seen before. But the true stars of the ceremony were the flower girls. Mia and Lily, dressed in matching yellow dresses, walked down the grassy aisle together, holding hands and scattering rose petals with solemn importance. When Elara reached Kaelen's side, he took her hands in his. His vows were simple, spoken from the heart. "You came into my life like a blizzard," he said, his voice steady and clear, "and left it a garden. I promise to be your shelter, your partner, and your home for all the days of my life." Elara's own vows were whispered through happy tears. "You found me when I was broken," she said, her voice trembling with love. "You saw strength in me when I saw only weakness. You gave me a family. You gave me back myself. I promise to love you, to cherish you, and to fill our home with laughter, always." When they were pronounced husband and wife, the small crowd cheered. But the loudest cheers came from Mia and Lily, who ran forward and threw their arms around them, creating a tangle of four people bound together not by law, but by love. Later, as the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the garden, Elara found herself standing in her old art studio. The room was filled with her sketches, her paintings, signs of a life reclaimed. On the main wall, in a beautiful silver frame, hung a single piece of art. It was a child's crayon drawing. 4 stick figures holding hands under a smiling sun. Kaelen came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured. She leaned back against his solid warmth, a feeling of peace settling deep in her soul. "I was just thinking about that night," she said softly. "In the car. How cold it was. How hopeless everything felt." She turned in his arms to face him, her hand coming up to cup his cheek. "It's funny," she said, a small smile playing on her lips. "Christmas Eve used to be the worst day of my life. The end of everything." He leaned down and kissed her, a soft, lingering kiss filled with promises and tomorrows. "And now?" he asked against her lips. She looked past him, out the window, to where their daughters were chasing fireflies on the lawn, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. A sound that was now the permanent soundtrack of their lives. "Now," she said, her heart full to bursting. "It's the beginning of everything."